Hello. Today we're going to be discussing the topic of evaluating resources. This is an important part of the research process. When we are conducting research, we need to know that the resources that we are looking at are valid. We need to know that they are appropriate for the assignment that we are doing. We need to be able to evaluate the information to be able to know with a good degree of certainty that the information is valid and useful to us. We do not want to use information that is misleading or inaccurate to support our arguments in our assignments. I'm going to go through some ways of evaluating resources today that will be helpful to you in making decisions on the information that you use. In the ever-changing world of information, we need to be ever more diligent in verifying the authenticity of that information. Traditionally, when evaluating information, we'd use the 5 W's: the who, what, when, where, and why. These questions would help us to evaluate what we were looking at to be able to tell if it were a reliable resource. When looking at a book, the information that would answer these questions was typically found on the title page. We would look for the author, the publisher, the date of publication, and be able to pick up clues as to the reliability of the book. Does the author have credentials? Are they an expert in the field? Is the book current? Becomes very important when you're looking at medical research or scientific research, subjects that tend to change frequently. If you're looking at historical documents, the date of publication isn't as important. Again, this goes back to knowing what your assignment is and knowing what the resources that you're looking at are. You can also look at the publisher. Is the book published by a respectable publishing house or an academic press? And then you can also look up reviews of the book to see what others have said about the book. Nowadays, with more information being available online and the traditional method of gathering information changing, it has become more difficult to know if what you are looking at is reliable. One way to do this is to use the resources available through the library website. The articles available in journals and the books available have gone through an editorial process and can be evaluated in an easier fashion. Accessing articles through the article databases provided by the library is a good way to know that you are getting decent information. You still need to evaluate the source. For example, an article that appeared in the opinion section of the Wall Street Journal may not be an unbiased source that you would want to use for a paper. An article from the Journal of Applied Economics would be regarded as an appropriate source for an academic paper. Use the link for the databases on the Medaille College Library homepage to see what databases are available and what subjects they cover. Medaille College also has access to over 30,000 full-text books online through what is called the eBrary. These books can be evaluated in the traditional way. There's also an added level of certainty because the books chosen for the eBrary have already gone through a process of evaluation. It is important to know that in this ever-changing environment of information, you can still count on the library to provide access to articles and books that have value to them. Again, if you ever have questions, and I'll repeat this at the end, always get in touch with one of the librarians and we'll be happy to point you in the correct direction. Next, we're going to talk about evaluating websites. This becomes very important because a lot of what people tend to use for their information, they may be getting online. Most of your evaluation skills that you'll use will be similar to the traditional method. We could still go through the 5 W's: the who, what, when, where, and why. We also want to look at some other things when we're looking at information online. One thing to remember is there's a lot of things that are published online and anyone can publish it. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're evaluating the information very strictly to know that what we're getting is good information for academic research. Again, we will start with the who. Who's the author? Can you find the information about the author? Sometimes on a website it's difficult to find that type of information. Sometimes it's easy. We can look at the About Us page if it's there. Sometimes, and we'll take a look at one here, this is from the U.S. Census Bureau. Again, they put their name right up front to say who this website was created by. Frequently, the U.S. government has a lot of good web pages. It's a good place to look if you're looking for statistical information on any type of subject. This was the economic census. But again, if you're looking for statistics online, you might want to stick with government sites because they tend to have very good information and it's reliable. Again, scrolling down on this page, we'll see some other information. This is another place to look for information on a web page. Again, this one says the source, the U.S. Census Bureau, the 2007 Economic Census. And another good thing to look at, and we'll talk about it in a little more detail, is when this was last revised. October 6, 2010, just a few days ago. The next thing that we want to talk about is the what. How accurate is the page? Does the information appear unbiased? Again, these are all questions that you want to keep in mind when looking at a web page. We're going to look at a web page here, and this was from the National Anti-Vivisection Society. They're against dissecting animals. Now, what this particular page says right in the middle, it says it's a non-for-profit educational organization that promotes greater compassion, respect, and justice for animals. Again, pretty straightforward and right in the middle of their page. We know what their approach is. We know that they're going to be against hurting animals. The next page that we're going to look at, again, it has the same type of idea. This was from a website called Hub Pages, but animal testing. Is it ethically incorrect? Again, looking at this page, it doesn't come straight out and say whether or not it's for or against animal testing. We can have a pretty good idea after we read through it, but this page may or may not be a page that we would want to use, and we may have to evaluate it a little bit more. Again, knowing what the page is being used for is an important part of doing our research. The next thing we want to talk about is when, the currency of the information. Again, we looked at the page from the U.S. Census Bureau and saw that it was updated just in October. That's a site that somebody is dedicated to, and they're going to be following it. Again, web pages can change all the time, or somebody can make a web page and never go back to it again. We're going to take a look at a page here, and this is called the Greener Living Guide. And again, we'll see when this was updated. Scrolling down to the bottom of the page here, it says that this page last was updated in 2007 to 2008. Now again, a couple of years old, Greener Living, this might be something that has changed. There's also, it says website designed by Optimist Under Siege. We could take a look at that as well to see who actually designed this website, to see what it's all about. And if we click on that, again, we see that this might be somebody who doesn't have the credentials to necessarily write about greener living in a scientific way. Maybe in a personal way she can. But again, looking down on this page, we see that she has a master's degree in French literature. Maybe not the most important thing for talking about greener living. The next thing that we're going to talk about today is where. Again, I'm going to show you a page that was done strictly for the Western New York region. Again, this is called the Regional Knowledge Network, and you could tell by this page that it's going to be focused on a specific region. It was put out by the University at Buffalo. You could see that in the upper right-hand corner of the page. Again, it's something that you're going to want to take a look at when you're talking about looking up research for different topics. If your topic is a localized topic, you're going to want to make sure you look at a website that deals with the topic in a localized fashion. Again, we're going to talk about the why. So we got through the who, what, where, and when. Now we're on why. Types of things that you want to think about when you're thinking about why. Why was the information put online? Again, we looked at the Anti-Vivisection Society. We know that was put online because they want to keep people from cutting open animals and dissecting animals in science. If you were to look at the government webpage, again, they're putting information out there just to educate people, to make sure that that information gets out there. Again, who's the intended audience? Knowing that is an important step. Maybe that page that we're looking at, the Greener Living, is just kind of a casual page that you can look at, that they're trying to draw people in as a blog to try to kind of help them live a greener life, but isn't necessarily scientific. Again, knowing what type of information you're looking at, who it's presented to, who it's for, is an important part of doing online research. Again, I mentioned before getting in touch with the librarian. It's one of the things that we do in our job is to help people evaluate information. There are a lot of different ways to get in touch with us. Medaille College has what we call, well, it's an instant chat message service called Meebo that you can chat with the librarian when the library is open. You can also click on the Contact Us and get the phone numbers and schedules for all our different campuses. Again, the hours are there as well. You can always give us a call. We also have access to a consortium called the Ask Us 24 Chat with a Librarian. Now again, this is available 24 hours a day to be able to answer questions that you may have concerning evaluation of information. Also, they could tell you what's available at the Medaille Library, something that's important. And again, we talked about that as a step of evaluating information as well. So some of the things just to remember is when looking at information online, just know who is putting that information out there, why they're putting it out there, how current is it, and again, usually a cursory glance of a website will tell you that. And if not, look around for an About Us page. If somebody's trying to hide, that information is not going to be there. And if they're trying to hide, you may question why that website is online in the first place. It may not be something that you want to use for an academic paper. Remember, when writing academic papers, your target audience is an academic audience. So you're going to want to support your arguments with other academic information. Anyways, good luck. And if you have questions, please contact the library. Thank you.